She went through his and I'm waiting. She stopped at the intersection.
Just go for it. It'll
No.
happen.
Stopped at the stop sign.
I will play through the song, number 403. It's a new gathering song, Spirit of Truth, of Life, of Power. I will sing it twice here.
Welcome to Dakota UU Church. I am Kathy Grindelin, as everyone knows. I'm acting as service leader for the month of March. I would like to extend a special welcome to those members and guests, looking for the camera, online. Here are some announcements. Our February 25th service will be a Black History Month commemoration with special guest Paul from Nigeria on Zoom. He will offer a dialogical presentation with Brian. We do not take a traditional offering, but there is a basket by the door for your contributions to the church. We can also take donations online. There is a jar back by the treats labeled Change for Change, which will be donated to charity. We would like to try something new at the end of the service. Please take a seat and meditate quietly during the postlude. Anyone interested in membership, please see me after the service. We're thinking of having a new member Sunday, another new member Sunday this year, possibly on Easter, depending on the availability of those who are joining. The March service assistants will be Dawn and Alice. Anyone who might be interested in taking on this role for April or May, please talk to Brian. Last but not least, we welcome back Barbara May as our presenter today. Does anybody have any other announcements?
This Friday is our next film night here at the church, 7 o'clock. And we're going to be watching the new version of Color Purple. So be here or be square.
I have an announcement as well. This coming Saturday, February 24th, from 2 to 4 p.m. right here in this room is the Healing Collective of Karmic Channels, of which I'm a part. So if you pay $25, you get to hear about all these different healers and what services they offer, and maybe get a better understanding of some healing techniques that you can benefit from.
Anything else? Okay, with that, I invite you to calm your soul, try to rid your mind of the chaos of life as much as possible as we prepare our hearts for our time together during this musical prelude.
Now time for our opening words. So Kathy, it was your call. Should we stand or sit?
We're sitting,
We're sitting.
so we can see it up there.
Again, we reground ourselves here in our highest values.
Love.
Love is the center and foundation of this faith.
Love is the power that holds us together as a community.
As
we enter into worship, then, let us open our hearts to the healing power of liberating love.
Because love is not only something we receive, but something we practice in community.
Let fall away all that might distract us from the wholehearted practice of love.
Let us be accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love.
As we continue to listen and learn, to act and grow, may each unfold in wholeness, both deeply loving and truly loved.
In the spirit of igniting the light of openness, in encountering each other, we light this chalice as a community, and we say together,
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers, to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, to serve you, Spirit of freedom, in the fullness of community.
Please rise in body or in spirit as we sing our opening hymn number 10, Immortal Love.
I'll play through it once you have all the pages up.
We gather together as a community of seekers to honor the interdependence of life, to respect the dignity of all, and to honor the land we walk humbly upon. Friends, let us acknowledge that we now stand and sit upon the traditional territories of the indigenous people, the Dakota, for whom this very county and congregation are named, and others, the members of the original nations of this land who continue to cry out for justice, preservation, and self-determination. We are blessed with a space, a community, and opportunities to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equity, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to live out our dream of a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. Let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. We have no children.
We have no children. I do have a story for all ages that I would encourage everybody to read on their own time if they would like, and if you have small children in your life that need gifts, it's called The Forgiving Tree. It is a lovely story about how holding on to hatred or anger is more damaging to us as the holder than it is to those that we give out.
Many of us are kids at heart, so you could totally read it.
You want me to read it?
We want to hear a story.
Yay! All right. It's called The Forgiving Tree. If I can find the beginning. Deep in the heart of the forest, there lived a group of woodland animal friends. They played together, shared food with one another, and laughed together. But sometimes, even the best of friends can hurt each other's feelings. When that happens, it's important to learn about forgiveness and compassion so hearts can mend and friendships can blossom anew. The illustrations are just gorgeous. One day, while playing tag, Willow the rabbit accidentally bumped into Asher the raccoon and made him drop all his berries. Asher was very upset and yelled at Willow, saying she was careless and didn't care about his feelings at all. Willow felt bad, but she didn't know how to make things better. The animal friends went to see Sage the wise owl, who was known for his wisdom and kindness. Owl listened to both Willow and Asher's side of the story and then told them a tale about the power of forgiveness. He explained how holding on to anger and resentment only hurts themselves, and that true strength came from showing compassion and forgiveness. Sage took Willow and Asher to a special place in the forest where there was a beautiful tree that glowed with a soft light. Sage told them that this was the forgiving tree, and that it had the power to help them let go of their anger and hurt. He instructed them to each take a leaf from the tree and to write down their feelings on it. Willow and Asher took the leaves and placed them on the forgiving tree. As they did, they felt a sense of peace and calm wash over them. They realized that holding on to their anger and hurt was only hurting themselves, and that forgiveness was the key to healing their friendship. They hugged each other and apologized for their actions. The animal friends watched as the forgiving tree glowed brighter and brighter. They felt a sense of joy and love that they hadn't felt before. From that day on, Willow and Asher's friendship was stronger than ever. They learned that forgiveness and compassion were the most important things in life, and that true friendship was worth the effort. The animal friends continued to play, share food, and laugh together in the forest. They knew that they might make mistakes from time to time, but they also knew that forgiveness and compassion would always be there to help them heal and grow. And the forgiving tree continued to glow with a soft light, reminding them of the power of forgiveness and love.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's nice. And
At this time, we invite those who would like to and are able to come forward and light a candle from the chalice flame and share a joy or concern, either silently or spoken.
Oops, I should do that. This is a concern and a sadness. I light this candle for the life of Alexei Navalny. That was sad, and it's very concerning what Russia does to its people. So I light a candle for his bravery and his courage. And my joy is that I have a music therapy opportunity to be a music therapist for St. Croix Hospice, and I'm going to interview tomorrow.
This is for my friend Linda and her family. Linda lost her mom this morning. So this is for Dorothy Glover. I'm gonna burn myself.
This is a joy and a concern. Joy is it's good to be back in person with you, and I'm feeling better every day. And the concern is I don't have much of a voice yet, and I'm a little concerned about how long that will take.
So I have two things this morning. First is I work with a woman at my other job that has a 13-year-old grandson that has suffered kidney failure. Next week he'll have both his kidneys removed, and then he has to go for 6 weeks on dialysis before he even gets on the list for new kidneys. So they are really struggling, and I asked her if it would be okay if I let the community know more prayers and more energy, and she thanked me and hugged me. And so his name is Martino, and he's 13. The other one is as most of you know, back in November my mom passed away, and Wednesday, Valentine's Day, was her birthday. So it's been an interesting week.
Anyone online? Meryl's can't hear people unless they're talking into the mic. Thank you. Anybody online have a joy or concern? I will light a final candle for all those joys and concerns that remain unspoken. May we know that whatever befalls us in life, we are held in the loving embrace of this community. And now we say together for all these joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken.
We hold you in our hearts.
And Jim, would you be mindful about whether or not they can hear me and where I am? Because I think the mic is right here. So today's reflective reading comes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It's an excerpt from a sermon that he preached on November 17th, 1957 in Montgomery, Alabama, simply titled, "Loving Your Enemies." So I want to turn your attention to this subject, loving your enemies. It's so basic to me. It is a part of my basic philosophical and theological orientation. the whole idea of love, the whole philosophy of love. In the 5th chapter of the Gospel, as recorded by St. Matthew, we read these very arresting words flowing from the lips of our Lord. Ye have heard that it been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them that despitefully use you, that ye may be children of your Father which is in heaven. Certainly these words are great words, words lifted to cosmic proportions. And over the centuries, many persons have argued that this is an extremely difficult command. Many would go so far as to say that it just isn't possible to move out into the actual practice of this glorious command. They would go on to say that this is just additional proof that Jesus is an impractical idealist who never quite came down to earth. So the arguments abound. But far from being an impractical idealist, Jesus has become a practical realist. The words of this text glitter in our eyes with a new urgency. Far from being the pious injunction of a utopian dreamer, this command is an absolute necessity for the survival of our civilization. Yes, it is love that will save our world, even love for our enemies. Brian did a really nice job last week setting the stage for my talk today. We didn't even plan it. It was fun. Although we will have to have a conversation about what the best Disney movie is. I know he's got Cajun roots and all, but if we're really being honest, Brave is the best one. Maybe it's the red hair and the Scottish roots, but one thing we can agree on is the message of both movies. Mama Odie taught us to dig a little deeper. She said that when we look closely, what we need and what we want may not always be the same thing. She also taught us that it may not be as hard as we think it is. The movie Brave also asks the main character to dig a little deeper. In order to mend what was broken, Merida must own all the parts of herself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Another interesting thing about the movie Brave is there is some question as to who is the villain in the story. They tell of a legend about a man who wanted to be the most powerful man in the land. He and the main character, Merida, fell prey to the same problem, the dangers of non-specific speech. And he was turned into a bear. He was portrayed as evil, and his reputation did precede him, and all of the warriors in the land wanted to make a name for themselves by killing him. But was he really the villain in the story? Because we find out at the end what he really wanted was for someone to break the spell. And so he was just a man who wanted to take care of his people, and he wanted to keep them safe, and he just got lost in the means and the choices of achieving that goal. Merida did the same thing. In many people's eyes, what Merida did could be perceived as unforgivable. And as it does in all Disney movies, in the end, love prevailed. Love mended the broken things. Love healed the hurts. Love caused the people to trust. Love broke the evil spell. A few years back, I made the decision that I was going to live my life from a place of love. I began to really dig deeper. I read books and talked with my minister. I started listening to podcasts. I began to meditate every day and became more intentional with how I did things, especially little things. For example, when I would get cut off in traffic by someone who was going way too fast and being completely unsafe, I would pray for them right there in the car. Things like, I'm sorry you're having a bad day, or I hope your day gets better, or even, I hope you get to where you're going safely without hurting anybody else. Some form of well wishes. And I remember shortly after I started doing that I had a friend in the car with me one day, and he got really mad at me for being so nice to that jerk that almost killed me. While almost killing me is a bit of an exaggeration, the person was rude and inconsiderate at best. I told my friend, I'm not living like that anymore. There is more joy and more peace in my life because I have chosen to love people, no matter what. And he just couldn't understand that. He gave me example after example of bad human behavior and how he would respond if it was done to him. He insisted that allowing them that behavior without some sort of retaliation was the reason our world was going to hell in a handbasket. And I countered with, I believe the opposite. I believe that it's because we refuse to love the unlovable that our world is suffering. Or maybe it is because we have deemed some people as unlovable that is really the problem. In either case, I think we get confused about what it means to love. Loving someone despite their bad behavior doesn't mean condoning the behavior, and it doesn't mean that we don't provide justice as a response to that behavior. It doesn't even mean that we have to tolerate the behavior. On the road, it's a little different because unless that person gets into an accident, there isn't much recourse, unfortunately. And I am certainly not going to wish people into accidents to learn their lessons. In other areas, though, like personal relationships, we can set healthy boundaries and we can hold those boundaries. If we're parents, we make rules and issue consequences all the time. And sometimes in life, the most loving thing to do is the hardest. If you have ever had to confront an abuser or someone who has a drug or alcohol problem, you have experienced this firsthand. My best friend in the world is a young woman in her early 70s. Last year, she sold her home and bought a fifth-wheel RV. In December, her partner finally retired, and on January 1st, they hit the road full-time. They're going to spend their days traveling to see all the places they haven't gotten to see yet. They started someplace warm, down in Texas. We haven't had the opportunity to talk much since before the holidays, so we scheduled a phone call. We talked for a little over an hour. One of the things she told me was that she had been having a recurring dream about Uvalde, Texas. You may have heard about Uvalde and the elementary school shooting that took place in May of 2022. She didn't know anyone involved. She had no connection to the town or the event, and she kept having these dreams. So we talked about it for a bit and then concluded our phone call. A few days later, I got a call from her and she says, "You are not gonna believe this." They're traveling in a sort of loose caravan of people. Every day they plot out their next few stops, what they want to see, and good places to camp along the way. Their next campground was about 40 minutes outside of Uvalde, Texas. She said, "What am I supposed to do with this?" So I researched the town and the event while she was on the phone with me that day, and I shared the information. And then suddenly she angrily exclaimed, "Am I doing this for him?" She was talking about the shooter. You see, in all the stories and all the information you can find about this event, they say that 21 souls lost their lives that day. In fact, 22 souls lost their lives that day. My beloved friend bravely went into town and she walked the perimeter of that school. She saw the memorials still outside. She found a bench across the street. She sat down to pray and meditate. We often meditate together, even when we're thousands of miles apart. Excuse me. She let me know that she was going into meditation, and I sat down and meditated with her. When she finished, it began to rain, and it rained all night in Uvalde. The next day felt different to her, and she said that a few of the townspeople even commented about a lightness that they hadn't previously noticed before. I knew in that moment what I was supposed to talk about today. You see, that boy was someone's son, and he was someone's brother, and he was someone's friend, And we can make assumptions all day about his life and his mental state, and it doesn't change anything. Can you imagine what it would be like to have your child or your sibling commit an act like that? Can you imagine the immense pain and damage that consumed that human to cause him to do that? He is indeed the villain of that story, and he was a human being. So when I found the sermon from Reverend Dr. King, I knew it was perfect for today. It's a very long sermon, and I wish I could have read it all to you this morning because it's really good. It's a transcript that's actually taken from an audio recording, and so it's written in the way Dr. King spoke. It's honest, it's practical, it's straightforward, and his passion is always evident when he spoke. If you're so inclined, I would invite you to read it in its entirety. It's from November 17th, simply titled Loving Your Enemies. Dr. King addresses how to go about loving your enemies, and he begins with digging deeper. He tells us to look inside ourselves as honestly as we can. And I've recently learned about and been studying about things called unconscious bias, that we all do things that we're not even really aware that we're doing, or where it came from, or why. And Dr. King tells us to take an honest look inside ourselves. He also tells us to look for the good in others. He says that if you can even find the smallest bit of good in someone, it can change your entire perspective if you let it. He also talks about the why. Why should we love our enemies? And again, it's a long piece. The part that struck me the most, though, was when he said, hate distorts the personality of the hater. He says we usually think about what hate does to those that are hated, but it is even more tragic. It is even more ruinous and injurious to the individual who hates. He goes on to give examples. He says the strong person is the person who can cut off the chain of hate and inject within the very structure of the universe that strong and powerful element of love. Dr. King says that love is an absolute necessity for the survival of our civilization. An absolute necessity for our survival. What Dr. King knew, what you and I know as Unitarian Universalists, is that we are all connected. When we talk about justice, we say things like no one is free until all people are free. We even have respect for the interconnected web as our seventh principle. So then, how can we debate whether one human is worthy of love or not? And this is the part that a lot of people struggle with. We are all connected, even to the villains in our stories, even to those we deem unlovable. And that hate distorts us all as humans through that connection. My invitation this morning is for you to continue to dig a little deeper. It all begins and ends with us. If we can inject that strong and powerful element of love in everything we do, think, or say, in every moment of every day, it creates a ripple effect. We cannot be frivolous in our thoughts. We cannot be nonchalant in our actions. We cannot live in denial of our own sacredness. I know as Unitarian Universalists, we have a great diversity of beliefs among us. Not everyone believes in God or Christianity, and some of us struggle with certain language and the way that it is used. I invite you to find your own way of defining sacred. Meditate, walk, journal, or whatever it is that you do to really focus on a thing, and focus on what sacred means to you. Then apply that to yourself and every other human on the planet. And please don't misunderstand me to say that only humans are connected and sacred. We are not. Everything in and on this planet is connected and sacred. Humans are very complicated creatures, if only because we make ourselves so. We usually have no problem seeing how beloved friends or family members are sacred, but deny ourselves our own sacredness. When we can fully embrace the fact that we are sacred, we can help others to understand that they are also sacred. It starts with us. This is what it means to have love as a spiritual practice. This is what it means to live from that place of love. And this is what it means to embrace love. Amen. Blessed be.
Some time for congregational reflection. Anybody has anything they want to share?
Yeah, about, I could sit here at 45 minutes, all the stuff you made me think about. Just one of them. One of the tricks or things I use with myself when I'm angry or feel like I want to be unloving to, someone who cuts me off in traffic or the Uvalde shooter, or, it's like, I always try to picture them as a newborn. And all of us, every single human being started as a newborn. And just full of potential and innocence and love and acceptance, vulnerability. And, whatever happened to that infant as it grew older, whether it was brain chemicals going crazy, or whether it was something that was done to them or something. I mean, they were all babies once, and you think of the baby, and you say, I can love that baby, I can still love this person. And another thing you made me think about is, has everybody picked up anything read by Dylan Klebold's mother? Dylan Klebold was the Columbine shooter, the follower. There was Eric Harris that was the real diagnosable psychopath, brain chemical problem. And Dylan Klebold was the depressed, things went wrong with him, kid. And his mom has written some, I don't know if she's written a book, but she's written some good art. Susan Klebold, I think was her name. But she wrote some very thought-provoking human stuff that is very thought-provoking and good.
That's actually a skill that, excuse me, that psychologists and teach, to think about people as a newborn baby. Because what they know is if you can, or the emotions are based on thoughts, and if you can change your thoughts, you can change your emotions. And so, and that's, Dr. King even, he knew that. He said if you can find even just that little spark of good, if you let it, it can change your whole perspective. So when you think about it in those terms, that's a tangible thing that most of us can think about. Most of us have seen or experienced a newborn at some point in time. So that's a tangible thing that we can do. And so that's actually a skill that is taught for people who have anger issues or issues with abusers and things where they just can't seem to forgive. They can't seem to get past that. Because at a certain point in your life, when you can't get past those things, it becomes all-consuming. And so somebody somewhere said there has to be a way to get through this. And so what are some ways that we can teach people to help people? And that is one of them.
I'm going to keep going unless someone else has something. Another thing you made me think about was that friend you were talking to who was prescribing retribution and anger and hatred. And okay, once I picture him as an infant, then, I mean, analytically, I have to wonder, what is it that made him think or learn or suspect that hate and anger and retribution was a solution? I mean, I agree with what you said. Yeah, I mean, love is the solution, but it would, I mean, this is just a wonderment. I wish I understood how some people come to believe that retribution or anger or hatred is going to make anything any better.
That's how our society runs.
Yeah.
I'm not agreeing with
Right.
it,
But it doesn't make any, it's never worked.
Well,
but that's why we're suing Trump, and that's why we're doing all these things. They have to be punished for that, what they've done. And it just continues to divide us and cause more hate and more frustration and more anger. And we have no sense of restorative justice or how to yes, you talked about you don't have to ignore what they've done if they've done something harmful. You still have to have your boundaries, but just causing more hate isn't going to resolve anything.
No.
So we have to figure out how can you fix this problem that you caused.
Well, and we often get confused with retaliation and justice. A lot of folks think one is the other,
Right.
and it is not. So,
And even families, women, typically it's women, it's not always, but women who bring in their children to a battered women's shelter, and they always interview the family, the children, the mother has always said, almost always says, we've never fought in front of the kids, they don't know why they're here. And the kids always know. And the kids, not only do they know, but they say, my mom was bad, so my dad hit her.
yeah.
Oh.
Yes. Because that's the narrative that they've interpreted based on, yeah.
So what they've heard is
Mhm.
other.
Exactly, but that's how our whole system operates.
Well, and that's one of the things about our system in the United States is we grow up in a vacuum. We are the only culture in the world where individual families live in individual homes. And so how many times have you heard somebody, you know, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s say, well, I grew up thinking this, I thought everybody did that. Because we live in a vacuum as we're growing up. I think that my experiences are what everybody experiences because I live with me and my parents and whatever that nuclear family looks like, right? And so I don't have any reference as to what other experiences other people have.
It's a Facebook.
Right. Well, social media is awesome.
Going back to the more minor situation of being in traffic, for some reason a few years ago, I started calling everybody Steve, which humanizes the other driver. It's like, oh, nice move, Steve.
I love that.
And it's a way of kind of diffusing the frustration in my brain.
I love that.
If the Crosbys are online, I have this image that all bad drivers are Steve, but not all Steves are bad drivers.
I'm not sure they're on, I can't tell.
When you think about the school shootings, and that's what, you know, just the conversation and thinking about people as everybody's a victim in some way of the challenges that happen to them, and then they react to that or live with that wound, which can make them not the greatest citizens. And I think of this argument that came up with some members of my family, that the problem with the school shootings is that they need to give all the teachers guns. That they're gonna fix. Because who's gonna walk into a school when they know the teachers are armed? And I thought, well, that's assuming they're thinking straight in the first place. I mean, there's no logic in any of that at all, in any way. So it just
And I think that speaks more to the confusion of justice and retaliation.
Yeah.
And the more we cross that line and the more we spiral, the more we become disconnected.
And I found it really, really hard to make that love connection with people that, in my family, that are really the gun proponents in terms of protecting themselves and their family. And then they have this cabinet with 50 or 60 guns in it that really don't make sense. There's something going on there that I really can't understand.
And next time you bump up against someone like that, bring up the point that a lot of the school shooters, a lot of shooters in general, are doing it as a form of suicide. So if the teachers are armed, it better suits their purpose than if they aren't. Yeah. Like Ted Bundy only killed in states that had the death penalty, because that was what was thrown to him. That's what I read. I didn't know him.
That brings up another part of the argument with guns that I've run into repeatedly. It's like, this is kind of a standard reply is, it's not guns that kill people, it's people that kill people. It's a mental health problem. Well, so that you can give them more guns? You know, I mean, the whole point is, the argument came up and.
You're addicted, give them more something.
Yeah, so don't blame that, blame this.
Yeah.
That doesn't fix anything, that just makes it squirrelier.
Well, you have a couple of guys in a bar who get into a fight. If they have guns, somebody's dead. If they don't, somebody has a broken nose.
Yeah.
You know, it
Or
seems very
maybe
simple
somebody
to
that
me.
wasn't even involved is dead. You know,
Right.
so at that point, there's
Right.
rage and there's a deadly weapon, and that's not a good cocktail anyhow. Yeah.
Alice?
Oh, I was just gonna say that, with the, you know, to answer Linda with all the people that have the guns, those people are scared. I ran into this the other day with my next door neighbor who, has 3 daughters. And they're grown up daughters. But he's always had this feeling that you know, he should have a gun because he needs to protect his daughters. And then the other day I was out and he had taken a line of dead trees from the side of his yard. And I asked him, well, what's going on? And he goes, well, I'm afraid, he said, they're dead and I'm afraid they're gonna fall on my family. And I go, your family is never out here. And he goes, well, they might be. And so Julio's, I've noticed, I've known this, you know, he's a dear friend and an excellent neighbor, but there's some extra fear in there. And I think that's sort of what's going on with the gun people. There's some extra fear there that, you know, and I've had a perfectly nice, privileged life, and so being in their shoes is really hard for me to figure out.
Well, fear is the new pandemic.
I was gonna say, it's not new.
It's not new, but it's really thriving. It's viral. I noticed that with trees, we have disease trees taken out, but I have 3 trees, neighbors around me that they took them out because they're afraid someone's gonna fall on their house. Well, they've been there for years and years. I don't know. I suppose it would be concerning, but so many, all of a sudden, all these trees are gone. That were not a problem. And it's disease.
Can I add a little bit of levity?
Well, you know,
So we have this cabin that's not in great shape. And one of the trees in the property, I'm close to the cabin, I am leaning over the cabin and I'm like, oh no, what if it? Maybe that would be such a bad, I'm not sure.
just be sure you go through the paperwork and you're sure.
I mean, to a certain extent, that's it.
Right, and the people who are feeling so in control themselves, right, but that idea that they need to be so in control and get rid of any threat.
It's all an illusion. I'm going to just say, I'm a big reader of the A Course in Miracles, and I'm going to get a bumper sticker made that says, and it comes from Course in Miracles, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. And what's the second line? Nothing real exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Put a bumpers.
Well, and of course, that need to control is a fear-based response.
You establish a feeling of control over the world while you're in infant. You cry, and a parent or someone comes and tends to you. You have a feeling of control over your world. If you don't, confession. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Well, and then as children, we need to teach, making sure we have control. Always ourselves. That's right. Our feelings, our responses.
Our responses.
Are you ready to wrap up? I was just about to say.
Okay,
I am watching the clock.
Okay, one quickie from
Okay.
Bowling Creek reminded me, when we moved into our house in Egan, the first weekend, or there was a terrible windstorm that knocked trees down, and our yard lost, what, 4 or 5 big trees? And I know, it was all the expense of moving and now thousands of dollars. Anyway, one of our cute neighbors came over and everyone was outside looking at all the fallen trees.
No power, people are knowing about.
Right, and so Penny comes over, he says, you know, this doesn't happen all the time in Egan. Oh, welcome to Egan. Okay, please rise as you're willing and able to join us in our closing hymn, which is number 299.
I will play through it.
It is a new one.
I've never seen plays. I can follow along.
Oh, I just got chills. Thank you, Kathleen. Kathleen picked all the music for today without really knowing too much about what it was I was talking about.
Anytime it's love, I'm
Yeah. And I just got chills. That was really good. I really like that. You know, when we cease to give, we cease to have. And that is the epitome of what I want us to remember and what I want us to go out into the world and do. So my invitation is really to dig deeper and to love unconditionally and start with yourself at home and then let it spread from there. Let's be seated for the
You can actually stand and sort of dance around, because this is going to be a swing.
I just think that's such a